If you know that there's more to Airtable than you are currently leveraging in your Airtable setup, look no further than this video, because we are going to be showing you how to start unpacking automation. Automation can feel a little intimidating if you've never built it before, but in this video, I'm going to show you 5 quick automations that come together in just minutes, and it will help you leverage Airtable's true power like never before. So, if learning more about Airtable automation is of interest to you, stick around and let's get into it. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Gareth and this is Gap Consulting. It's our mission to help you unlock the full potential of Airtable and similar no-code tools on this channel. And in this video, as I said, we're going to be diving into Airtable automation, which is honestly one of the most important and valuable components of Airtable. Now, before we get into the heart of the video, I first want to invite you to join me on some free training. I've put together my Airtable crash course to teach you the basics of building an Airtable. It's going to go into automation and many other components. So if you're learning how to leverage Airtable in your position or your business, look no further than that training. You can grab it for free at gapconsulting.io/airtable-crash-course, and I will include links wherever you found this video. But without further ado, let's hop on into the heart of things and get into building some automation. Now, first and foremost, you'll notice that I have a very simple setup. I simply have some tasks here. I've got task names, I have status, I have a due date, and I have a date field here where I can put in any date time stamp. So what we are going to be doing throughout this is building on this data set. So the first thing you might wonder is, how do I even get started with automations? And the truth is, you have to build the data first so that you can then work through building the automated process. So in my case, I've put together some sample data here, and we're going to use it as we go through the different steps in our automation. Now, the other thing you might wonder is, when do I use Airtable automation versus another automation tool? Now, I go through this in other trainings in more detail, but the high-level version is Airtable will give you a certain number of automations based on your plan every month. You are probably paying for Airtable, or you're on a free account that does include automation. And if you are already getting automation, why not use it? So my advice is generally to say, if you have Airtable automations available, use them, because it's not going to charge you more. There's no incremental cost for running an automation on Airtable. As compared to many other software tools like Zapier or Make, these tools, while they do offer more robust automation potential, it is also coming at a cost. There are generally incremental costs for those software, and so every time you use automation in them, you run the risk of getting charged more. Airtable's not that way. Airtable's going to give you automation that you're either already paying for or not if you're on a free plan, and so why not leverage it? So my general advice is to say, if you can build the automation in Airtable, do. If the automation is too powerful, too robust, it might need to go into a third-party tool. But for our example here today, we're doing the basics. So no worries about anything too crazy or complicated. We're going to handle all of this right in Airtable. So let's go ahead and jump into our first automation, which has to do with sending notifications based on a status update. So here we have a status field, planning, in progress. We have another status for in review, and then when something is complete. Maybe we want to send out some sort of notification when a task gets checked off. When it's marked complete, we want to send a notification. How do we do it? Well, we can go into the automations panel. Right now we're in the data layer, so click onto automations, and we're going to open up our first automation. The first thing we do with any automation in Airtable or somewhere else is establish a trigger. A trigger is the thing that initiates the automation. So for us, we're going to say when a record matches conditions in this example. This is a very common trigger in Airtable that you will use over and over again when building your internal automations. So I'm going to grab that record matches conditions, and now I establish the conditions that will trigger the automation. So I'm going to say what table this is in, and we just have the one table, tasks. And now I outline the conditions that will trigger the automation. And for us, we mentioned the status field is complete. And just like that, I've established the conditions to initiate the automation to send a notification. Now, we haven't built the notification. That's still coming, but we now have the initial trigger. We're saying when a task meets the completed status, then that initiates the automation. And if we say choose record here, we can make sure that we built our conditions appropriately. You will notice that we only see options here that have the complete status. In this case, cook dinner in our data layer is marked complete, so we could use this as sample data to move through the next steps of the automation. Let's do it. So now we will add another step. We are going to now send out notification. We can do this in a number of ways. If you're using Slack or Microsoft Teams, we can send messages to people. We can send them to specific people, to channels. We have a lot of options in sending messages internally. We can also send email. If we've integrated our email with Gmail or Outlook, we can send through that. Or we can use Airtable's native emails, which are a little bit more restricted, but also possible. For us, I'm going to use Gmail. I'm going to send myself a Gmail whenever a status is marked complete. So let's go in, we'll select our account. And if you haven't already integrated your Gmail account, you just need to do so by following the steps on the screen here to connect a new account. Then you choose who it's going to. And in my case, it's going to always be sent to me. So I'm going to just put in a hard-coded email address. If the information changes, if it's dynamic, that means it will be different every time the automation runs, then you can take the information from other steps in the automation. And we're going to do that in the body of the email. But right now, let's put in a test subject. So I'll say, task complete. And then here, I'm going to say this task was completed. And this is where we're going to bring in dynamic information. We're going to use the task name. We're going to click on the plus button, and we're going to go into the record that triggered the automation, and we can see the information about that record here. And so here's the task name, cook dinner. We can plug it in, and this is now a variable that will be different every time the automation runs. And we can present a preview here, and it will look just like this in our example. It will always be sent to my email. It will always have the same subject, but this part right here is dynamic because it is changing with whatever record initiated the automation. Pretty straightforward. All we have to do now is publish this and give it a name. Come up here to rename the automation, toggle it on, and then every time a new status is marked complete, that email will be sent out from our Gmail and received at the email address that we specified here. Let's move on now to number 2. We're going to send out some sort of notification when a deadline is within a certain time range. So let's head back to our data layer and take a look. We have a due date, and we can say something like, send me a notification if a task is almost due. Let's say it's due tomorrow, and it is not yet complete. How do we do this? Well, we already know how to build the notification. What we need to do is change the trigger. So let's head back into automations here, and I will rebuild the trigger from our initial automation. And so here I would just come in, and again, I'll keep the trigger type a record matches conditions, but I'm going to change those conditions. It's the tasks table, but I want to make sure the status is not complete, because if I've already completed it, why do I need a notification that the due date is approaching? I don't. So let's mark it, the status is not complete, but I can add an extra status here, or rather an extra condition. And I will also insist that the due date is within a certain number of days. So I'll say within the next number of days, let's find that here, next number of days. Make sure to scroll over or elongate this so that we can see more of the screen. And let's go within 2 days. So within 2 days of the due date, and it's not yet complete. Do we have a record that meets these conditions? Well, we look at the choose record and we don't. So this is an indication to us that we don't have the records here in our system, or we built our conditions incorrectly. let's head back to our data layer to verify. So as of the date of recording here, it is October 4th, and I don't have anything due within the next 2 days. So let's go ahead and mark this one to be due on October 6th. I'll head back to my automation now, and I'll choose a record. And now it finds a record. So this is a great check for you to ensure that you put the right conditions into your trigger. Now, before moving on, I want to point out that a record will initiate an automation trigger only when it meets the conditions. If it continues to meet the conditions over time, it does not reinitiate the automation. So this one, obviously this record will still be incomplete for a while. It's not going to continue sending notifications over and over unless the record stops meeting the conditions of the trigger and then it re-engages the trigger conditions. So the only way that an automation will send the same information over and over again is if a record does not meet the conditions for a moment and then it comes back to meeting the conditions. That will reinitiate the automation. But if a record continues to meet the conditions, that is to say, the same record has already run through this automation once and it hasn't shifted out of meeting the conditions, it's continually meeting the conditions, it's not going to continue to send the automation over and over again. It's just when a record meets the conditions that we have to be concerned about this. So now we have the right things set up in our automation trigger, and we need to revamp whatever the notification is. So instead of saying task complete, we would say due date approaching, and then we can highlight the task that is approaching and maybe even call in the due date for when it needs to be completed. So this is how you can build an automation that triggers within a specific deadline. Now let's look at a different kind of an automation. Number 3, we're going to show you how to build a report on some kind of schedule. And this is a really common automation, especially for large organizations that need to track information across multiple teams or people. And if you want to see a digest of that information, some kind of a summary, we're going to show you how to do it now. So first things first, we need to create a new automation. So let's create new here, and I will add a new automation here. And what we're going to do is set it up at a scheduled time. This is a completely different trigger from what we were using previously. We can set up the interval type to be every week. So we could say every 1 week. And let's say that goes on Monday at 8 a.m. as an example. So this way, every week on Monday at 8 a.m. my time zone, right now I'm in BST, every 8 a.m. Monday, I'm going to start to see this automation do its thing. Now, what's the thing it's going to do? We want to send a digest. We want to send out information in a report about tasks that meet certain conditions. Let's say we want to send out a list of all those tasks that are not yet complete, along with their associated due dates. Let's get into it. I have to find all of those records first. So I will find records in my first action step. I select the table, just as we've always done, and now I can establish the conditions under which I want to find records. So let's go. Let's say that the status is not complete, and no, that's probably it. That's fine. Let's just get a list of any tasks where the status is not yet complete. And we will test this action, and you're going to find that we see 2 records, right? We've got make the bed and feed the dog, neither of which are in a completed status. And that's perfect. So now what we want to do is send out some sort of a digest with that information. So when we find records in Airtable, there are generally 2 things that we will do with them. Either, number 1, we send out a list of all of the information we found in this find search step. The other thing we might do is update those records individually. So for this particular example, we're going to go with the first one. We're going to send a digest or a summary of all the information that we found. So again, pretty straightforward. We're just going to send an email, and I'll choose my Gmail again, and I will send it to my email address. And then here we'll sync up with the right account, and I'll say weekly digest here. And now we need to bring in the information that we found in the previous step, which we hit the plus for. And now we have to go down to the step where we found the information. It was the find records. And I want to put this together in some kind of a list. So when I select list, I can also bring in the different components that I want to include from the records that we found. So I can say I want the task name, the current status, and maybe even the due date to be included here. Let's insert that, and I just have this one component, list of records. Now I'll go before that with my cursor, and in a previous line I'll say, here's the weekly digest of incomplete tasks, and just like that, our email's ready to go. Let's generate a preview. This is what it would look like. We're going to get the task name, status, and due date, just like that, sent in our email. I also want to highlight that we could change this up and make this a grid if you wanted. So rather than inserting it as a list, let's change it to a grid, and we'll generate a preview of this. And you're going to see something similar, just a little bit easier to read, especially if you have a long list of different tasks. So just like this automation will send every Monday at 8 a.m. my time zone, this task list of incomplete tasks to the email or emails in the automation. Now let's jump into our fourth automation, which is going to be updating records with timestamps when we take actions. This is a relatively new feature in Airtable. It kind of flew under the radar, and it is really, really powerful, especially if you want to make sure that you don't send emails multiple times. Do you remember earlier I was talking about how an automation, if it meets conditions, then stops meeting conditions, then re-meets those conditions, it could retrigger or will retrigger your automation. You might not want this to happen. You might only want to send that notification email one time. I'm going to show you how to do it right now. Let's go back to that automation in the previous step. And we had these status conditions that said the status is not complete. The due date is within 2 days. It's easy to meet these conditions back and forth, right? We could imagine that somebody updates the due date and we send an email again. Or maybe they mark it complete and then they go back and they mark it incomplete. Well, now we've sent the email again, reinitiated this automation. In order to prevent that from happening, let's add a condition that the reminder sent field, if you remember, we have this date timestamp, and we can plug it in with the time that we took an action. So we can say, hey, we sent an email on this day at this time. And so we know that if there's anything in there that we've already sent the automation. So let's instead say, this is empty. If the reminder sent date timestamp has anything in it, that means that we've already sent the notification. We don't want to send it again. How do we get that timestamp filled out? Let's look. We're going to build a new automation step after we send the Gmail. So now we're going to come in here and plug in an updating of the records. We're going to update the record that we just sent the email notification in regards to. So that's in the tasks table. And the record ID, we have that because it's the record that started the automation. So let's find the record ID from the first step here. Plug that in. What are we updating? We're going to update that reminder sent date timestamp. And if we click the gear here on the right, we can opt for this to be dynamic, meaning it changes every time. Now when we click the plus, we can say at a specific time, the actual run time of the automation. What's this look like? Well, all we're going to do here is send the email based on the record that triggered, and then we're going to update the reminder sent date time. And this is valuable because once there is something there, the automation will not re-trigger in the future. So anytime you need to add a timestamp, especially for an automation that you only want to ever trigger once, this is a great hack for you to employ. And just like that, we have now been able to update those records with the timestamp. Let me actually run this as configured. We're going to run the whole automation here. And so now we can go back to the data layer and see that, yes, in fact, we have the timestamp in there, and this will prevent the record from meeting those conditions again. If I go back to the automation and I try to test my conditional trigger here, I find nothing because the record has a timestamp. Now, the last one here is going to get a little spicy. This is something I don't generally recommend doing, but there are occasions where you'll want to do this, and that is deleting records from Airtable. Now, I say I don't generally recommend it because frankly, deleting records doesn't make a ton of sense under most use cases. Most of the time, you want to keep all of your data there. Even if all you've done is removed it or filtered it out of the view, the historical data matters because you want to have information that you can drive better decision making within your business. You can only do that if you store data and you have stuff to analyze. Even if you don't know how to analyze it, don't get rid of it unless there's a strong use case. One of those use cases might be needing to stay under record limitations for Airtable. Because Airtable is a cloud-based software, it does not allow you to just, put millions and millions of records in your database. There are limitations, and if you're coming up against those, you might want to delete records under very specific conditions. So for our example, we're going to imagine that when a task is marked complete, after the email is sent that says the task is complete because we have a notification email, then we will be removing the record from Airtable. Not something I usually recommend, folks, but in this video, we are going to show you how to do it. So let's drop in. First and foremost, we need to rebuild our automation. So we have our conditions to kick that off. We'll create new. We will say new automation. Number 3, when a record is meeting the condition of the status complete. When that happens, we will then send the email and do all the magic stuff. Then we want to remove the record. And you'll notice that if I go here, I don't have delete record from Airtable as an option. Unfortunately, Airtable does not make this natively available, and probably for good reasons. As I already stated, this is not common practice or not best practices when building and using databases. But for our purposes here, in this example, I'm going to choose to run a script. And this often requires a paid or upgraded Airtable plan. So again, make sure that you're checking the different requirements of your system, of your Airtable plan. Some automations are going to require a paid plan. So for us, what I'm going to do is first start with a record ID. I'm naming this new variable, and I'm going to find the value from the previous step in Airtable. And I'm going to pass this record ID through to my automation script. And within the script, I'm going to ask it to delete the record that I stipulate with that record ID. So let's get to it. Do you know how to script? Neither do I. I'm going to be jumping into ChatGPT. I'm going to ask it off camera to write my prompt, and I'm going to copy and paste that prompt right in here. Let's go for it. So here you can see the result I got from ChatGPT, and because I've done this a number of times, I have come against the same hurdles with ChatGPT writing scripts for Airtable automation. So what I've learned as best practice is to share some information with ChatGPT, and I very often defer to grabbing screenshots. I'm showing ChatGPT, this is what I've done. I'm passing through a record for Airtable record ID, and I'm building this automation, and here you can see that I have a variable that I've named rec ID, and I need you to build a script that does exactly this. So this is my prompt. Please write a script that deletes a record in Airtable. Here are screenshots of my automation, and I'm calling out that I have a variable for the record ID called rec ID. That's all. This helps ChatGPT give you the right answer more quickly. So the more context you put together in your prompt, the better ChatGPT will be at writing your scripts for you. So now that I have it, let's copy the code. I'm going to swing back into Airtable and pop it into my scripting step. And you'll notice that I don't have any red lines here, except for output text. Record ID was deleted successfully. So this, if you're looking at the validity of a script, you can check here and it will highlight or underline any areas where things might be a little wonky. But now I've given it a test and you can see that it has failed. And that is because exactly as it was underlined, this is not a function. This is something ChatGPT didn't realize was incompatible with Airtable's JavaScript function. So frankly, we can probably delete this whole thing. I don't need an output. I don't need to know that this information has been deleted. I just need it to be deleted, right? So for our example, we can go ahead and test this again and see if we get the thumbs up or a green light, and it looks like we are not going to. So we could not find the record, probably because the last time I ran the test, it deleted the record, which would be pretty funny. So of course, it's already successfully deleted the record, and now the rest of our function should work just fine. So let's swing over now to the data layer to verify that this works as planned. Make sure that you've named your automation again and turned it on. And from there, we will swing on over to the data. And here I've got a task. All I have to do is mark it complete to see if it will be properly deleted. And just like that, it's now gone. The automation performed its function. And if we want to verify that it did work, we can go back to the automation, look at the history, and see that it ran successfully and that it executed the script. And here's the execution log. It took this record ID and it deleted the record. So that's it, my friends. We've covered really quite a lot inside of Airtable automations, from updating records, finding lists of data, sending notifications, and then on the more advanced side, using some scripts. I hope you got a ton of value from this video. And as I mentioned at the top of the video, if you want to learn more about Airtable, the best place to start is our Airtable Crash Course, or swing by our website and schedule a call with someone on our team who can help you with a free strategy call to get you set up in Airtable and the associated tools around it. Of course, if you got value from this video, we'd love a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for more content like this, but most importantly, keep on building.